The good Reverend Jessie Jackson just endorsed Bernie Sanders for president in the same day that Kamala Harris endorsed Joe Biden. Yeah, good bit of irony there, but we're going to talk about it because this is not as expected as many people would think. Let's talk about it. What is going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mika Says Sukas. And of course, as always, I am your humble host, Niko House. So, Jessie Jackson has just endorsed Bernie Sanders for president of the United States of America. Once again, this was after Kamala Harris endorsed Joe Biden. Now, I know what some people may be thinking. Some people may assume that this is a no-brainer, right? Civil rights activist endorsing a civil rights activist. But that's actually not the case. Surprisingly enough, Jessie Jackson actually endorsed Hillary Clinton in 2016. Mind you, this is around June of 2016. So in other words, Jessie Jackson was very aware Bernie Sanders was in the race. He was very aware that endorsement at such a crucial time. Well, one, it could have helped if he made that endorsement prior to June. But Jessie Jackson is very careful to not endorse anybody until basically the election was decided because California had just gone to Hillary Clinton. Now, it was peculiar to me at that time because I don't know if y'all know this, but Bernie Sanders actually campaigned for and endorsed Jessie Jackson in 1988 race. In fact, Jessie Jackson went on to not only win Burlington after Bernie Sanders campaigned for him, but he even won Vermont. And that was one of the 13 contests that Jessie Jackson actually won in that 1988 race. That primary ended up going to Dukakis, and I'm sure most of you all remember at this point that Dukakis ended up losing ultimately to George H.W. Bush, if I recall correctly. But nonetheless, a lot of the older voters may be aware that Bernie Sanders did help bolster the progressive name recognition of Jessie Jackson amongst, well, let's be honest, white voters who may have only known him as a civil rights activist and not as much as a politician. So it was surprising whenever Jessie Jackson didn't endorse Bernie the first time. And in fact, it was even more surprising when Jessie Jackson actually went on to insult Bernie the summer of that election. It was, like I said, it was just peculiar. And unfortunately, I've learned even amongst black civil rights activists who've actually done a hell of a lot. Like, this isn't like Al Sharpton, people. Jessie Jackson has done so much for communities, not only the black community, but the Native American community, indigenous community. He's fought for them. He's fought for Palestinian rights to such a degree that he's come under attack for it a lot by the quote unquote Zionist community. So it was a little bit of a letdown to see Jessie Jackson pushing Hillary Clinton after everything she's done to black people. But it looks like he is making an attempt to reconcile. So let's look at the quote from Jessie Jackson regarding his endorsement for Bernie Sanders. With the exception of Native Americans, African Americans are the people who are most behind socially and economically in the United States, and our needs are not moderate, Jackson said in a statement. A people far behind cannot catch up, choosing the most moderate path. The most progressive social and economic path gives us the best chance to catch up, and Senator Bernie Sanders represents the most progressive path. That's why I chose to endorse him today. The Biden campaign has not reached out to me or asked for my support. He added, the Sanders campaign has, and they responded to the issues that I raised. He was put on a ticket to balance the ticket, not enhance it, Jessie Jackson said about President Obama's decision to pick Biden as his running mate. Barack was against the Iraq War. He was for the Iraq War. Barack was against the crime bill. He was for the crime bill. But what Jessie Jackson said is 100% facts. It's true. People have to remember that Biden being put on that ticket was to help racist, liberal, white elites be more comfortable with voting for a black man named Barack Obama. Not only comfortable, but actually go out and campaign for him. So, some might argue that it worked, but I would say that winning 93% or something like that of the black vote is probably what worked a little bit more. So when you win that much of the vote in key areas like Michigan, like Pennsylvania, etc., like you're going to win the election. So I mean, that's what happened. But Jessie Jackson is 100% correct. I just wish that he had this type of conviction whenever it was time to endorse Bernie in 2016. But we're going to count our blessings. We're going to count our blessings and be very thankful that he has decided to go ahead and endorse Bernie this time, or rather not endorse the establishment shill. So there's another report out that says he gave 13 reasons as to why he endorsed Sanders. I'm going to run through them really quickly. I don't want to go through the detail of all of them, but I'm going to speed through them. He says voting rights. We must have states' rights and local control voting system with few national standards that's allowing states to engage in voter suppression. Senator Sanders and Ro Khanna will introduce a right to vote constitutional amendment in Congress next week, which is great, by the way. I just wish that they would, I don't know, maybe push the Securing America's Elections Act. It's not about making sure that, it's not just about making sure people get to vote on the day that they, that their state goes, but also it's about making sure that those votes count. We don't want any placebo votes. But that still definitely is a step in the right direction. But I do have to be clear that there has been nobody better on election integrity and voting rights than Tulsi Gabbard in the race. Although, of course, Bernie does come in second place there. And he is way, way ahead of Biden in that regard. So his second reason is Senator Sanders will support reforming and renewing an effective U.S. Civil Rights Commission as called in H.R. 4. I'm not familiar with H.R. 4. I have to look that up. 3. Senator Sanders supports a wealth tax and at least $50 billion targeted funding to HBCUs. That's great. Senator Sanders agreed to support aggressive funding for Silicon Valley to create venture capital and hiring programs with HBCUs in order to diversify the lawyers and money managers they do business with. He said that Senator Sanders will task Congressman Ro Khanna, who represents Silicon Valley, to push for making tech economy more inclusive of the black community. It's peculiar how many times Jessie Jackson keeps repeating Ro Khanna's name here, but let's continue. Senator Sanders supports a single-payer health care plan that I advocated for in 1984 and 1988 with his Medicare for All plan that will provide every American with universal and comprehensive health care with extra funds targeting rural and minority hospitals and community health centers. Senator Sanders, for number 6, Senator Sanders is committed to a U.S. mediating role in a two-state solution, a mutually negotiated Middle East peace plan that includes Israeli security and Palestinian justice. So, number 7, Senator Sanders supports more trade and fair trade between African Americans, Africa, and the Caribbean nations. Number 8, Senator Sanders has agreed to support a dramatic expansion of Pell Grants, which is a big deal, a free public college education, and supports forgiving existing student debt loan, where black women have the largest student loan debt. Number 9, Senator Sanders supports massive new investments in public education generally, including vocational education, but also funding that directly targets the special needs in the black, brown, and poor communities, and ensuring that every teacher is paid at least $60,000. That's actually one of my favorite programs from Bernie. That $60,000 a year for teachers is massive. A lot of our low information, quote unquote, voters and low information constituency starts right at that foundation of public school. From K through 12. We need teachers to care about their jobs. And the only way they can do that is by making sure they don't have to have 2 jobs, getting paid enough so that they can take more pride in what they do rather than having to put pride in their second or part-time job. Senator Sanders supports an end to endless wars, supports reviving the State Department's role by massively increasing negotiations and diplomatic effort to bring about peace and justice among the nations of the world, and spending the money saved on rebuilding the nation's infrastructure and launching job investments through his intensive Green New Deal. Senator Sanders will work to create a market for black farmers, given how they face historic discrimination and were locked out of the agricultural market. 12, Senator Sanders has committed to putting an African-American woman on the Supreme Court. We need more than just an African-American woman. We need to make sure the African-American woman is not a neoliberal like Loretta Lynch. But I commend him for wanting to break the glass ceiling in that regard. I'm sure that there have been plenty capable of doing so. We just haven't done it. Senator Sanders, number 13, the final one, is Senator Sanders acknowledges Reverend Jessie Jackson's challenge to put an African-American woman on the 2020 presidential ticket and will give it the highest consideration. Senator Sanders has also agreed to make sure that black women are in the cabinet and are at the highest levels throughout his administration should he be elected president. I 100% believe that. I do believe that he'll have a lot of black women in his cabinet. So those are all of the reasons that Jessie Jackson has decided to endorse Bernie Sanders. Pretty straightforward. It looks like it does look like Bernie actually went up, sat down with Jessie Jackson, and had a legitimate conversation about. And Jessie Jackson seemed open, like to being catered to by Bernie Sanders. And I should just say, this is how we get things done. Maybe him and Bernie had some type of disagreement, or perhaps they had a falling out in the past. I don't know. We will never know their personal relationship. But whenever both sides come to the table and are very open-minded about what their goals are, and realistic, right, and genuine, because there is some bad faith actors who will, there was nothing that Bernie Sanders could have done to earn their vote, right? They were going to vote for Biden regardless. Right, Kamala Harris being one of them, Beto O'Rourke being another one. Beto ran as an Our Revolution endorsed candidate for Senate, right? Kamala Harris ran on Medicare for All for so long, trying to claim to be a progressive, similar to Bernie Sanders for so long, claiming to be a progressive prosecutor for so long. There was nothing realistically that Bernie could have done to win her endorsement. Not that it would have helped, but you get my point. Now, Clyburn is saying the same thing about Bernie as Reverend Jessie Jackson is saying about Biden, which is that Bernie never reached out to Clyburn for that vote. If so, that's a major mistake. But I am glad that he did reach out to Jessie Jackson right ahead of Chicago and Illinois, because that's a big deal out there. Mitch Osborne, he had to counter for the ever-powerful endorsement of Kamala. Right? Everybody knows that endorsement from Kamala Harris or Kamala is going to put Joe over the top. So he might honestly just kill whatever black support he might have had, in all seriousness. So, yeah, man, that's good for Bernie. We'll see. Real quick, I want to see if Joanne Reed covers it. Probably not, though. I was looking earlier. I was trying to wait to see if they were going to say something positive. Nope. Oh, man. Nope. She just talks about, of course, Joanne Reed immediately talks about the fact that Harris comes to the defense of Biden and endorses him. Then she posts some thread about, understand this. It's not that people simply mean you were rude to me, so I won't vote for you. It's that people mean your movement doesn't seem to want me and your coalition doesn't seem to be open to me. I'm more worried about the execution of your policy that will be the same. Really, bruh? Really? Really? Like really, bruh? Yes, there was an issue, right, with Bernie supporters, but the establishment did not have that issue. Let me explain. I'm a total supporter. I've seen some of the worst of Bernie supporters. There are some Yang supporters that have seen some of the worst of Yang supporters, of Bernie supporters. That's not necessarily representative of everybody in the Bernie movement, of course. However, there were nobody coming to the defense. Bernie didn't tell them to stop bashing Tulsi. Didn't tell his surrogates to stop bashing Tulsi. Didn't ask his surrogates to stop bashing and smearing Yang. But he asked them to stop attacking the establishment people. So there have been problems with Bernie supporters, but the establishment wouldn't even begin to understand. Whatever they're pushing is bullshit. Because I could understand if your claims were, if you want to take those claims as being legitimate, I would take them as legitimate if you were as critical of Biden's base, or if you were as critical as of Kamala's base. Biden had a surrogate, an official surrogate, doctor a video of Bernie Sanders and got caught, and she had to retire or resign from her position from the Young Democrats she was a treasurer for the Young Democrats in Pennsylvania. Biden never said anything about this, even though this was news. And nobody ever demanded that he rein in his supporters. Nobody's demanded that Kamala rein in her supporters. Buttigieg, that he will rein in. The supporters, surprisingly enough, that I haven't actually had any issues with whatsoever out of the establishment was like Klobuchar. Roughly. That's basically all I could think of. Warren supporters were rude as hell to Bernie, demanding that he dropped out, calling him sexist. I ain't forget about that. But nobody was demanding that Warren supporters cool out. This is a narrative being created. And Joy-Ann Reid is pushing it because they can't beat Bernie on the issues. They can't do that. And I really hope that Bernie brings up the fact that Biden has a surrogate that doctored a video. Not using policies to attack Bernie. You want to use policies to go back and forth with Bernie? Hey, be my guest. It's an election. But you're doctoring videos, bro. Doctoring videos. And you want to talk about civility. Now all of a sudden, y'all are concerned with how Bernie would implement his policy, despite the fact that, realistically speaking, out of the two candidates that are at the top right now, his campaign is much more inclusive than Biden's. And I have much more faith for Bernie's shortcomings. I have much more faith that he would have an inclusive administration, substantively inclusive, not just, hey, Loretta Lynch, please protect these super racist white elite. Please. Not that type of inclusive. Not the Eric Holder inclusive. I mean, actually having someone who is a minority be in a position where they could affect policy in a real and tangible way. I have more faith that Bernie will do that than I have ever had for Biden. In fact, one of the reasons the identitarians don't like Biden is because they're worried that he'll just pick a bunch of old white guys. That's what they're worried about, that they won't get their comeuppance for supporting the establishment the way they would for people like Kamala and Warren. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and hop off here. Thank you so much for tuning into that live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. Like the video. Stop what you're doing right now. Like the video. Share the video. Comment below if you're not watching this live, but always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell if you like that segment of Mikasa Sukasa. Of course, if YouTube is giving you trouble, as it always does, you can download the Rockfin app and follow us there. Also, if you want to continue to help our show grow, you can help us reach our goal of 500 patrons on Patreon and donate as little as $1. Really, anything helps. Other than that, always remember, people, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.